Mr. Prime Minister, nice to see you again, sir.
Good to see you, Greta.
Love to have you here in the United States.
Well, it's warm and sunny and very friendly.
Indeed it is. I want to talk first about Ron Cavilli. He is the last hostage. He's not alive, but he's the last hostage. Hamas has not returned his remains. Is that because they don't know where his remains are, or are they lying?
Well, we're looking for him. And I have to say I was deeply moved when President Trump, who's been the greatest friend we've ever had in the White House, by far, he met the family. And you should see how his heart went out for them. You know, the parents of this hero, he single-handedly, he ran to the front on October 7th when these monsters invaded us, raped our women and murdered them, beheaded our men, burned our babies. He fought single-handedly with a broken arm. And then he got shot twice. And he killed 14 of these terrorists until the very last moment, and the last bullet. And then they killed him and took his body, so we're going to bring him back. And the president was right. He said, we'll get him back, and we'll get him back, one way or the other.
President Trump once said, I heard him talk about, I thought, like, well, if he's dead, why bring him back? But once he talked to the families of different survivors, he got it, why it was so important to return the remains, even knowing that it was not a live body, not a live person being brought back.
Well, you know, people have that sentiment that, at the very least, they want to have a grave that they can come to. And I understand that. But in any case, you know, with our combined efforts, we brought in the last 20 live hostages. Nobody believed it. But President Trump and I believed it, and we coordinated our efforts. We on the military side, he on the political side, made a tremendous coalition. And we got 254 altogether out of 255. One left.
But is Hamas, do you think Hamas knows where his remains are? Or?
Well, you know, I can't tell you, but I can tell you we'll get him back.
Hamas, has Hamas, I know yesterday President Trump said that Israel's 100% kept its agreement under the 20-point program. Has Hamas, because obviously not returning Mr. Cavilli is one thing that they were supposed to do, but what about the other steps that are required?
Well, I think the president had it right. You know, we've battered them. I mean, they were part of this larger Iranian axis, and we had a seven-front war with Iran and its proxies. And we achieved great things. And against Iran, with President Trump's help and what he calls the beautiful B-1s, you know, they are incredible machines. And only America has it. And only America had President Trump to send them. So we accomplished great things, but we still have things to finish. One of the things we have to finish is to get Hamas disarmed. And President Trump couldn't have been more explicit on that. That's part of the deal. That's part of their commitment. And they have to get rid of these, you know, they still have 20,000 fighters. We've obliterated a lot, but they're all armed with Kalashnikov rifles, and they execute the Palestinians who resist them. So you've got, altogether, they have 60,000 assault rifles. That's disarming them, you know, and we'll get it. We'll do it.
In terms of getting those arms into Gaza, it appears to me, right, and I think that I've read, is they were coming through the Philadelphia corridor,
right,
which Egypt was supposed to guard. So obviously Egypt or whoever was supposed to guard it didn't guard it effectively because he wouldn't have had all those weapons on October 7th in the bloodbath.
Well, they had tunnels underneath for smuggling them. That's why I insisted on going there. But that was only part of the larger thing. We changed the Middle East. We've had an unbelievable success, and by degrading Iran, which was a first-rate power, now it's a second-rate or third-rate power. They were throwing their weight all over the place, exporting terrorism, not only to every part of the Middle East, but to Venezuela. They're in cahoots with the Maduro regime, you know. They're exporting terrorism to America, to the American hemisphere, and then they want these Hezbollah and Hamas to get their guys into the United States. So Hamas and Iran's and its proxies are a threat not only to us, but to Israel, all America's allies in the Middle East, and to America itself. I think we've dealt them devastating blows, but there's still some work to be done with the proxies, and we're doing it.
Well, you mentioned Venezuela. Venezuela's had, Senator Marco Rubio has been speaking about this, Secretary Marco Rubio has been speaking about this a long time. Hezbollah does have its foothold in Venezuela, has for a long time, is the drug trade. They may use guns against Israelis, but they use drugs against the United States.
Exactly. Well, I wouldn't eliminate the possibility of arms shipment from
That may be next.
from Iran to Venezuela. So this has got to change. I mean, and I think President Trump is showing remarkable leadership, facing up to that threat here, supporting your fighting ally, Israel, to fight not only for our interests, but also for American interests against these radical Muslims who basically chant death to America, and they mean it. And so we have to make sure they don't have the means to do it or the will to do it, and that's what we're doing.
Well, you and I have spoken many times before, and you always point out that the beef that Israel has is not with the Iranian people, it's with the Iranian regime.
Right.
And now, in the last few days, they've had a series of protests, people out in the street because they've had a currency collapse. Do you see this as perhaps a big change maybe coming in Iran, or is this just something that Iran is going through right now?
Well, they're going through it for a very simple reason. You know, this tyrannical regime has oppressed the people of Iran. They're great people, enormously gifted, with a great past, and they could have a great future. But this future has been taken over, really hijacked by these theological thugs, the mullahs and the ayatollah who's on top of them. And what did they do? They took the billions that they had and put them, you know, chasing nuclear weapons and proxy terror groups instead of giving it to the people. So the people don't have food, they don't have electricity, they don't have water. Iran could be one of the richest countries in the world. Their GDP with 100 million people, almost 100 million people, is smaller than Israel's with 10 million people. They've robbed their people of the future, and the people are expressing it now in protest. You know, if you have a change, it'll come from within. It's up to the Iranian people, and we understand what they're going through, and we're very sympathetic to them.
What's actually sort of parallels what's going on in Venezuela, though. I mean, the people there in Venezuela, they've got hyperinflation up to something like 555%. I read recently, which I thought was almost impossible numerically. But they, you know, they're starving. They are one of the richest. They're the richest country, or could be in our hemisphere. Because of their supply of petroleum or oil.
Right. Well, when you have these tyrannical regimes, these dictatorial regimes that, you know, that suppress any initiative, any free market economies, but any human rights, the people eventually speak up, and that's what they're doing now in Iran. No question about it.
In your wildest dreams 5 years ago, did you think that there'd be this change, this abrupt change to the Middle East? Because now, I mean, the Middle East is undergoing a huge transformation.
Huge, and it creates the opportunities for peace. And President Trump and I are committed to expanding the Abraham Accords in the Middle East and beyond to big Muslim countries, and we think that's within reach. And that's really the job we have before us, A, to assure security, but also to expand peace and prosperity. And that is made possible because of our cooperation. And President Trump has been an incredible president, not only for us, but against the forces of radical Islam that threaten America, and also to build new alliances between Israel and our Arab neighbors and Muslim countries. And I think, you know, he should be credited. He's done a lot for peace. He's solved so many, you know, in a year. He solved so many conflicts around the world. People didn't believe it, you know. Azerbaijan and Armenia, I mean, nobody dealt with that. He dealt with that. And there are many other places. So, you know, I don't know if he'll be given the Nobel Prize because I don't know the makeup of that committee. But I'll tell you one prize he's going to get. And we announced it in the visit. We have the highest prize that Israel can give. It's called the Israel Prize. It's given to exceptional contributions by Israelis. And for almost 80 years, we've had a tradition. Only Israelis get it. Well, that's changed because this year, President Trump will be the first non-Israeli to receive Israel's highest prize, the Israel Prize. And boy, you know, there's so much enthusiasm about it. There's so much support and appreciation for the role he's played, both for Israel, the Middle East, and the world.
Why do you think here in the United States, he's got 50% of the population adore him? Mega people. And then you've got 50% of the population that thinks he's awful.
Well, you know, history has a way of settling these questions over time, and people can see who are the outstanding presidents. I'm the son of a historian. I'll tell you, history will judge him well. So sometimes it takes time for people to appreciate, because there's this battle, you know, internal battle of, you know, constant vilification and political opposition, but ultimately, you know, that's settled over time. The dust settles, and you see who made the difference, who really changed things, who brought America back. He did.
You know, it's interesting how, looking back at what he's done in terms of contribution, is it's not just now here towards Israel, but something that may not seem like a huge deal to a lot of people, but is. But in 1995, Congress voted that the U.S. Embassy would move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Right.
President Clinton wouldn't do it. President Bush wouldn't do it. President Obama didn't do it. President Trump gets into office his first term and he does it.
Yep. He says it like it is, cuts to the chase, and then he acts. And I think that, and right now he said something else which I very much identify with. He said there are oppressed Christian communities and America has to stand with them. So guess what? We stand with them. We stand with them because the Christians are oppressed everywhere in the Middle East, you know, except one place, Israel. That's the only place where the Christian community is growing and it's thriving because that's part of our ethos. Everywhere else, they shrink. But even in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, when we controlled Bethlehem 30 years ago, there were more than 80% of Bethlehem's population was Christian. We gave it to the Palestinian Authority 30 years ago, and guess what happened? The Christian population plummeted, and it's now less than 20%. They all leave. They left in Lebanon. They're leaving other parts of, they're leaving Syria. They were kicked out of Turkey, many of them. So I'm committed to defending them as best as I can in the Middle East. And I also identify with what he said about Nigeria. In Nigeria, they're massacring them. To the extent we can help with intel, we'll do that too, because that is one of the things we stand for. And I think you're very lucky to have a man with this conviction, this sense of cutting to the bone, getting right to the heart of things, and to act. You can identify things, and not many leaders can do that. But there are fewer who actually act on what they identify. I think this is a change. You asked me 5 years ago, we could imagine this thing. I don't know about 5 years ago, but on the second day of this seven-front war, when we were attacked viciously by Hamas, and the next day by Hezbollah, I said, we will change the Middle East.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.